Good day and welcome to the webinar, Moving Certification Forward for Mission Critical Products. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sandi Wendelken. I'm the editor of Radio Resource International magazine, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. TCCA and the Global Certification Forum are the webinar sponsors. We hope you and your families are safe and healthy, and we appreciate you joining us during these unusual times. That said, we are glad you have joined in because we have some excellent information and two expert presenters scheduled for the webinar. We will include time at the end of the webinar for questions from attendees, and we will do our best to wrap up the webinar in an hour to be courteous of everyone's time. Before we begin the presentation, I want to briefly explain a few of the user features of our webinar service. To the left is the GoToWebinar viewer through which you see the presentation. You will see the attendee control panel on the upper right-hand side of your screen. The control panel can be expanded or collapsed by clicking the icons on the left side of each pane. Also use the control panel to ask questions and select your audio mode. The default audio mode is mic and speakers through your computer, but you can also click the telephone button and dial in using the number you received in your email. All attendees are muted to reduce background noise. If you'd like to submit a question for one of the presenters or myself, use the questions pane. Just type in your question and click send to submit. We will reserve time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. The presenters have made a PDF of the slide presentation available. You will see a handouts pane in your control panel. Just click the name of the handout to access it. Your default web browser will automatically launch, open a blank page, and the handout file will automatically start downloading to your designated downloads location. You can then click the downloaded file to open it or save it. Finally, a recording of the webinar will be emailed to all registrants about 24 hours after the webinar and will be available at rrmediagroup.com. And now for more on our presenters. As head of Certification 5G, Chris Hogg advises on the operational and strategic development of GCF certification. As mobile technology becomes increasingly pervasive across all industries, he advises on how to ensure interoperability between products and the networks and services to which they connect. He is the co-chair of the GCF-TCCA Joint Task Force on Mission Critical Certification. Prior to GCF, Chris was a standards manager in Nortel, actively negotiating standards for IMS and voice over LTE in a range of international groups, including ITU-T, ETSI, and 3GPP. Chris runs his own consultancy called Kensington Communication Consultants, advising clients in the mobile and IoT industry. Next, we have Harold Ludwig, who is the founder and managing director of Arico Technologies, a company offering consultancy, training, and project management services for the professional mobile radio industry. Harold has more than 20 years of experience in the PMR industry, particularly in development and testing of safety-critical communication systems, integration of command and control systems, and end-to-end design of nationwide public safety networks. Harold was appointed chairman of the TCCA Technical Forum in 2006. The Technical Forum is responsible for the interoperability of TETRA equipment, including infrastructure, radio terminals, and applications. Harold is now looking into testing interoperability and certification aspects of mission-critical broadband communications. With that, we'll get started. Thank you again for joining us, and Chris will now take us through our webinar agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Here's what we're going to talk about. First of all, we'll each give an introduction to our organizations, GCF and TCCA. Who are we? What do we do and why do we do it? Harold's then going to talk about how to test and certify mission critical products, and in particular, what are the challenges that we've faced. I'm then going to talk about the Joint Task Force, what were its goals, what were its achievements. And finally, Harold is going to bring us back right up to date with conclusions and next steps. And as Sandy has said, we look forward to questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Okay, so first up, introduction to GCF and TCCA. So GCF is a global certification forum. We are the mobile industry's device certification. We've been around roughly 20 years, and essentially all of the major mobile and global brands participate in GCF. So we have roughly 300 plus member companies. They're drawn from network operators, device manufacturers, and the test industry. And in recognition that we're now also embracing the mission critical industry, we've created a new mission critical operator member category as well. Why do we do it? Well, we do it because although standards are important, it's clearly important to check and assess compliance of products to these standards because this ensures that They will work with networks. It increases confidence that will work with networks. Having an industry standardized test plan also reduces costs, both in terms of not having to go to have many different operator acceptance test plans, but also reducing time to market. And in the end, it's also about improving end user and customer experience. So a number of our operator members have done some studies where they have looked at dropped call data across many phone calls made on their networks with many different devices. And what they have all reported back is that non-member devices that have not gone through the GCF process on average tend to have a much higher dropped call rate. Now, clearly, a dropped call is annoying if you're a consumer, but it's something that could be very bad if you're talking about communications between emergency workers. So we work with a wide range of industry partners. So the standards organizations like 3GPP and GSMA, but as mobile technology becomes increasingly pervasive amongst various different industries, then we work with partners in these industries as well. So for automotive, we work with 5G AA. For connected factories and industrial automation, we are working with 5G ACIA. And of course, for mission critical, we're working with the Critical Communications Association. So I'm now going to hand over to Harold, who is going to introduce TCCA. Harold.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone from my side as well. I will give you a short introduction to TCCA. TCCA is an association which was founded 25 years ago, so we're celebrating this year 25th birthday. And we are supporting open and standard-based solutions for critical communications. Our members are from end-user organizations, operators, industry, and other stakeholders in the mission-critical communications area. TCCA is a platform for collaboration and information exchange, basically. Chris, can you please go on to the next slide? TCCA supports mission-critical standardization. We are a 3GPP market representation partner, and we still continue to maintain the Tetra technology and its interoperability testing process. So please, next slide. So a little bit about how to test and certify mission-critical products, or why we should do this. Mission, as Chris already mentioned, mission-critical services must be reliable because lives of people or lives of the first responders can depend on it. So it's very important that it's reliable. Also, the products, the devices, the applications, and the servers need to interoperate with each other if they come from multiple vendors, if they are operated by multi-operators, and if you have a multi-service provider, then somebody has to ensure that all these devices, application servers work together with each other. Certification of compliance to standards is a key way of achieving this kind of interoperability. And once you have done this testing and certification, you can also reduce the deployment costs and time to market. There are different types of testing, how you can test. First type of testing is so-called conformance testing. And conformance testing ensures that the implementation under test conforms to the 3GPP standard or conforms to any standard. The next type of testing is interoperability testing, which is to ensure that two or more implementations under test interoperate with each other, so they work together correctly. And we will come back to this type of conformance testing and interoperability testing later. We also have a third kind of testing, the so-called performance testing. performance testing ensures that implementations under test meet certain key performance indicators, so-called KPIs. This could be, for example, the call setup delay, the voice latency, the voice quality, or the battery lifetime of your device. So what do we currently have in terms of mission-critical testing and certification? 3GPP Working Group Run 5 has written some conformance test cases. They are available in a 3GPP specification called TS36.579, and there are several parts of it. And these are conformance test cases for MCPTT, MC video, and MC data. As I wrote on this slide, they are currently not verified. We will come back to this because for the verification of the test cases, you have to execute these test cases on a real implementation. Out of these test cases, there is a Task Force 160 in ETSI, which is developing TTCN3 code out of these Run 5 test cases. They have done this already for MCPTT test cases. The issue here is again that these test cases, this code is not validated yet. The code is available, but it's not validated yet. The next step is that you take this TTCN3 code and port it on a test equipment, like an LT simulator. Here we have the issue that none of the commercially available test equipments currently have implemented any of these mission-critical test cases. Because most of or all of the test equipment vendors, they don't see a business case in doing this. The mission critical market is very small compared to the consumer market, and they all focus mainly on 5G now and don't see the business for mission critical test cases. But we will come back to this, we'll overcome this. Once you have a test equipment available, then you can use it for testing and certifying MCPTT according to GCF process. GCF has already approved a work item for MCPTT, but this work item is not yet activated because there's no implementations on test equipment to do this. And at the end of the chain, we should get a certified product, but because of the issues I just outlined, we have not verified and validated test cases, not implemented on test equipment, no activated MCPTT work item in GCF. We don't have certified products at the moment. This is a big issue because at the moment everyone can claim to have standard compliant products, but nobody can prove it. So what we're trying to do now in the first step is, or what we will do with the help of 3GPP, they have already said instead or in parallel to have the implementation under test, the device and the client, which would require a LT simulator to test it. They also allow for initial testing now that the client only, so the client software only, can be submitted as the implementation under test. And with this, we can also use an IP-based simulator as a test equipment. Currently, I'm aware of 3 different projects, all funded by the US NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. 3 projects which are currently developing this kind of test equipment, IP simulator, which can also lead to an LT simulator later. Once we have this, we can validate and verify the test cases and activate the GCF work item, and then we can also test and certify products. In parallel to all this, what's currently happening is the so-called ETSI plug tests. Here we also have a document with test cases. At the moment, we have 141 test cases and 9 so-called observer scenarios, which are a little bit more complex test cases. And this test case document is currently amended for the next plug test, for the 5th MCX plug test, which is going to happen in September this year. During the ETSI MCX plug tests, there is extensive testing between different implementations, but there is no certification. So this is a first start to test equipment, but unfortunately for the certification, we still rely on other processes like GCF. So next slide, please. Yeah. So because of all these issues with the current certification, TCCA and GCF decided to partner. Why GCF? I mean, from our point of view, from TCCA point of view, it was very logical because GCF is the mobile industry certification solution, also 20 years of track record, industry-wide membership, and long-established systems and processes. GCF is doing already a lot of testing and certification for underlying LTE protocol stack, and adding mission-critical services to this will be just an extension. And there's also an openness to learn from and to benefit from each other. That's why we partnered. And end of last year, we started a joint task force to look into mission critical certification. And Chris, over to you. You will now explain about this joint task force activities.
Yeah, thanks, Harold. So we had the joint task force. I'm going to explain about its goals and its achievements. So, yes, the joint task force, as Harold said, it was established in January this year to run for 6 months. So it has actually completed its work. And really what we were trying to do here was to bring together the mission critical community together with the GCF's certification community in order to understand what to do and to make a prioritized view of what needs to be done. So the purpose of the task force was to determine what should be assessed for certification, i.e. what's the scope, to determine what processes should be used. Are our existing processes going to work, or do we need new ones? And also looking at the future, how can we ensure the ongoing management and development of MCX certification going forward? So we held 8 meetings. Most of these were web conferences. We did actually have one blended meeting, which was kindly hosted by Sapura, just at their place in Cambridge, just before the UK lockdown occurred in March. We had roughly 40 delegates per meeting, with 85 representatives from 39 organisations. And you can see the names of these organisations in this slide. We had a good cross-section of members from manufacturers, from academia, from network operators, and from the authorities and users as well. So a number of authorities are, for example, UK Home Office and Erasverkot and BD Boss. We also had, for example, Police Netherlands as well participating. So a key document that we produced was the MCX gap analysis. We wanted to identify what the certification scope should be, but we felt that the best way to do this would be to draw on everybody's experience and to understand what is actually deployed and what is planned to be deployed in the near term. So we had many inputs to this. This document is going to be a living document. It tracks the deployments and the frequency bands and the types of deployment, whether or not they're relying on a kind of MVNO architecture or whether or not they're relying on dedicated frequencies. We also tracking standards evolution in the MCX core and test specifications. And probably most critically, we're bringing together members' views and regarding what MCX features should be deployed and what the phasing should be. So this led us to the certification scope, which is covered in the next couple of slides. So the key point here is that in the first phase, we would be doing device certification only. So this is whereby the MCX feature or MCX app is pre-integrated into a device, and the device plus the app are assessed as a complete package. Certification itself would be conducted under GCF's rules and processes. So that means that you would need to be a GCF member to certify, and the testing itself would be conducted in one of GCF's recognised test organisations. And as I alluded to before, it's a limited MCX feature set that focuses on the key features in use today. We also have set the goal that we will start from 3GPP release 15 onwards. This basically reflected the task force members' view that this is really what is being deployed and what is stable, and also in relation to potential concerns regarding backwards compatibility from earlier releases of MCX in 3GPP. So there was high-level scope of phase 1 features to be covered are essentially mostly mission-critical push-to-talk features. They're mostly in relation to on-network calls. There's a couple of MC data features that we're adding in as well, because they are being used in existing deployments. So that is short data service and enhanced status. But essentially everything all the features that we're covering here are everything to enable you to do various types of calls, whether they are group calls or private calls, whether they are, and with different levels of status, such as emergency or imminent peril. And as always, the expectation is that security is paramount in this industry, and therefore all communication would be encrypted as well. In terms of how MCX devices will be certification tested, as I said, the plan is that in phase 1, we're talking about a complete package of a device plus an integrated MCX app. And therefore, both the LTE and the integrated app would have to be assessed for the purposes of the certification. In terms of LTE, that involves looking at the radio and the signaling protocols, and the normal GCF practices would apply. So this means a mixture of lab-based testing, where the device is evaluated against a simulated LTE network, interoperability testing, where it's client-server-based testing, and live network field trials, whereby the device is driven around up to 5 different networks with different infrastructure vendors and within network elements of these networks. For the MCX app itself, as Harold indicated, the present situation is that we do not have commercially available test equipment to allow lab-based testing for this. So therefore, what we've done is we're working with GSMA's Field Trial Development Group in order to define suitable functional field trial test cases for MCX phase 1 certification. So that work it is hoped that work will be starting soon, and therefore once we get that, we will be in a position to have MCX device certification. So I'm now going to hand back over to Harold, who's going to talk about the conclusions and next steps. Harold.
Okay, thank you. So what are the conclusions? Next slide, please. Yeah, so the GCF-TCCA Joint Task Force was set up for 6 months. So these 6 months are over and we have closed the work. But we have recently, or GCF has recently established a new working group, the so-called Mission Critical Agreement Group, which will take over all the initiated work from the Joint Task Force and continue to develop mission critical certification. The Mission Critical Agreement Group is one of the agreement groups in GCF. There are also other agreement groups, for example, the Certification Agreement Group or the Field Test Agreement Group or the IoT Agreement Group. So we will continue to develop this mission critical certification. We will manage and prioritize certification for the future phases. So we, as presented by Chris, we have defined for the phase one, for the initial phase, the most important features, but there are a huge number of other features waiting to be included in the processes. And this mission critical agreement group will be open to all GCF and TCCA members. The goal is, as Chris said, we will start with the field tests because at the moment we don't have any equipment to conformance testing. But once we have conformance testers, we can also start doing lab-based conformance testing when this equipment is commercially available. So we will then integrate this new testing process as well. And we will look into additional features and also additional interfaces and products. At the moment, we are focusing on the device, certifying the device. But in the mission critical arena, it's also important to connect mission critical servers with each other. And then we also need to test this interface between the servers and certify the server side. We also have plans to allow standalone certification of the mission critical client alone, so without the device. And we're also looking into interworking with legacy systems. So if you connect your Tetra or P25 or GSMR system with an MCX system, there's also some requirements for testing and certifying this. So there's a lot of work remaining, and we will address all this in the mission critical agreement group. Next slide. So in summary, GCF and TCCA, we have partnered to advance mission critical certification to make it happen. The task force itself is now concluded, and its work leading to an agreement on how to and what to certify in the first phase. So we will certify LT devices with integrated MCX clients. This will be assessed under the GCF rules, and we are working with GSMA to amend the DS11 test cases, field trial test cases with mission critical features. And GCF has established a mission critical agreement group as a permanent group to manage and develop further the mission critical certification. Okay, I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris and Harold. That was great information. Certification is definitely an important topic and will be more so as the market continues to evolve. We have some really good questions coming in from our audience. So I'm going to start with some questions. And again, if you want to give the presenters a question, just use the questions pane and type in your question. So the first question we have, while developing a mission critical communication user equipment test tool, is it sufficient to implement tests based on the 3GPP 36.579 documents that you outlined in the presentation? Or do we need to add more tests based on any other documents from groups like ETSI?
Should I going to answer this? I can try to answer. Maybe Chris, you can add something if I missed that. So what you implement on the test equipment is up to you as a test equipment provider. And if you want to test 3GPP round 5 test cases, you have to implement the round 5 test cases. If you want to test something else, you have to implement something else. To my understanding, for the GCF MCPTT work, item conformance, it's necessary to implement the round 5 test cases. So according to this 36.579 specification only. So for this kind of certification, you don't need to implement any other test cases. But of course, you can implement other test cases to do other tests.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you, Harold.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Next question, if a client only can be submitted as an implementation under test, does this mean that control room solutions that operate as a client can be included under GCF's current test scheme?
Okay, I could try and answer that. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so obviously the first phase we're really looking at, you know, the devices with the integrated clients. You know, part of the reason for that is because that's GCF's bread and butter. That's what we do. But certainly in future phases, we would expect that you would have standalone clients, and that people might want to mix and match devices with clients. Certainly, things like control rooms could be within the scope of a future phase as well. Harold, do you want to?
Yeah, I think yes. From GCF process view, at the moment you can only certify devices and clients. But as Chris said, in the future we are looking into standalone clients that would also allow control room client implementation to be tested. But if there is an IP-based tester available, you can already start testing your control room client with it. You don't get a GCF certificate, but testing is already possible then.
Yeah, it might just be worth adding that in the past, GCF has, on the mobile industry within GCF, has had separate client certification programs for specific standardized clients that were, at one time being deployed in the industry. So we already have a sort of set of processes to be able to do this. It's really a question of, in the future phase of work, looking at the requirements from the mission critical industry, looking at the set of processes that we already have lying dormant actually at the moment, and seeing whether or not it's a case of adding to them, or if we need to start somewhere else. But we shouldn't be starting from scratch for sure.
Okay, good. Next question, because the 3GPP TS 36.579 does not currently have any hasn't certified any products to date, how have the currently deployed mission critical push to talk network and products, how have they been certified, the ones that are currently deployed?
That's a very good question. I would like to know as well. My assumption is they have been tested and certified according to any vendor internal or operator internal procedures. Certainly there is no GCF certification. Maybe there is some other certification, but I would be careful if nobody has implemented around 5 test cases. So I guess this is some internal certification so far.
Yeah, so my understanding of the way this is working at the moment is that it's really about the existing deployments, and they themselves have set up their own processes to be able to assess compliance where they deem that necessary. But clearly that doesn't really become very scalable when you then talk about many deployments. Might work for manufacturers and for operators, so there's just essentially one project or one or two projects. But once you get to hundreds of projects, imagine every country around the world will eventually deploy something like this, then that's really not scalable for the industry, and that's why you need an industry scheme.
Sure, makes sense. Okay, next question. Will location data sharing in SDS have a certification? Location sharing is a concern here in the US, obviously.
I think we have location in as one of the phase 1 features, but this will be just basic location sharing. Maybe we need to look into the specifics for the US, what's important, but then we can put it in one of the next phases.
Okay, a good input there. The next question is whether you know which test equipment vendors will be supplying MCPTT test equipment. Have you heard from the vendors on that point?
I've not heard of any vendor of commercial LT simulators. As I said, I'm aware of 3 ongoing projects, all funded by NIST, which are developing MCPTT test equipment. One is Polaris Networks, the other one is Validate, and the third one is called MCS Testing.
Okay.
I mean, I think ultimately where we want to get to is there commercial test equipment available, and there's a market for that. So, yeah.
Sure. Would you like to talk about how quickly MCPTT, MC Video, and MC Data services could be deployed in the real world? Looking into your crystal ball.
I mean, they are already deployed. I mean, there are some installations already. And I guess in FirstNet, they will also have MCPTT this year. And in UK, I think they're looking for MCPTT this year rollout. So it's already deployed. About MC Video, MC Data, I guess this will come a little bit later. But if you look at the ETSI MCX plug tests, there are a lot of vendors testing MCPTT, MC Data, MC Video, so the implementations are available, products are available.
Okay. Let's see, our next question. This is a question about whether the presenters are meaning that eventually certification will be done for the handset and application together. Will there be a different combination of hardware and client apps that will require certification each time? I think the question is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in phase 1, the idea is that it would be the device along with the app itself would be assessed as a complete package. We do recognise though that there might be a demand to have that a mission critical operator might want to buy devices from one vendor and then sometime later may be integrating or changing apps. So the idea of having a separate standalone certification for the mission critical app itself might be something that is useful. But at the moment, we're kind of sticking with the processes that we've got as a way to get started.
Yes,
Okay.
but standalone client certification is on our list. So in the future,
yes.
It will be possible to also test the client only.
Okay. The next question is whether there's a minimal set of tests that needs to be passed before a device is considered as certified. I know you had your initial list of features up there, but is there a minimum requirements list?
Yeah, I mean, in I can got the screen here, so of course we can go back. Yeah, so I mean, it's really that there's if a device has got an MCX client on it, it's an LTE device, then in general for an LTE device, you would expect that the LTE device might support a number of different frequency bands, and it may have a number of different LTE specific features within it. What GCF certification covers for that portion is assessing radio frequency, the signaling protocols in relation to managing the radio resources and managing the mobility signaling. And GCF certification criteria, it contains a number of tests which are in so-called full status, which means that basically the industry has agreed that this must be assessed and that there is commercial test equipment available where these tests can be done. And what our requirement is for conformance tests, all tests which are in full status must be run and must be passed. So there's, I mean, there's within that there are some ways in which we try to avoid double testing. For example, an LTE device might support different frequency bands, but it's not necessarily the case that you're going to be running all of the protocol tests and all the different frequency bands. You may be running it only in one choice of band, at the choice of the manufacturer. So there are optimizations as well to try and make sure that we have full confidence in the certification, but also to do it in an optimal way. Would that answer the question?
I think so, and if not, we'll watch for a follow-up from that attendee. The next question is specific to FirstNet in the US. FirstNet is using band 14 spectrum for mission critical push to talk, and they're working with AT&T. Harold said there are no devices for conformance testing. So does that mean there are no devices in Europe, or are you referring worldwide there?
Spectrum is a little bit differently allocated in Europe than in the US. In Europe, it's a decision of each country which spectrum they allocate for PBTR, for public protection and disaster relief. It's not done on a European level. And there are several options how the countries in Europe can assign this PBTR spectrum. Some of the spectrum is in so-called gap bands. Other spectrum is in commercially available frequency bands. And in some countries, they don't have any specific PBTR spectrum, but they rely on a commercial spectrum of a commercial operator. So it's quite diverse, and depending on which spectrum you are using in your country, you may or may not have certain devices supporting this. So there are devices, there is certification of these devices, but there's currently no certification of the mission critical specific functions and also mission critical specific PBTR spectrum for these devices.
Okay. All right, good. The next question, for the UE client part of the test, have you considered a USRP radio with open UE as the device? This would allow a controlled environment.
So, Chris, do you know what USRP is? I don't know this term.
I don't, I'm afraid now. I think the issue is there is no LTE network simulators from the kinds of vendors that make LTE network simulators that at the moment support mission critical push to talk tests. So it's not just a case of having a sort of LTE radio at each end. It has to be, the test set itself has to be able to support I think something like 3 different cells, so that it can simulate the network, and it can simulate things like handovers and so on. So it's quite a complicated piece of equipment, and I'm not aware that there's any of the vendors are supporting the MCX on that at the moment.
Okay. Next question is about whether there are any additional certification fees for GCF members, or how that structure works.
Yeah, short answer is there's no additional fees. Basically, GCF is a member-based organisation. There's a fee for becoming a manufacturer member or a mission critical operator. It ranges depending upon your level, whether or not you're associate or full member, and it ranges from €5,500 to €11,000 and per year. That's for an unlimited number of certified devices. The actual certification test itself, you would, as I said before, certification test is conducted by one of our network of labs. So these are our recognized test organizations, and these it's basically a market, and it's up to the manufacturers to work with and to negotiate certification tests and any associated fees. GCF itself is not involved in any way in those commercial relationships. If you like, we set up the framework for enabling everything to happen, but it's a market for certification test services.
Okay. Next question is about whether there are any timelines planned when the first products would be expected, the first certified products would be expected to be in the market. Again, your crystal ball.
That's the crystal ball question again. I mean, our plans are, if we go the field test route now, if we manage to create these test cases for the field tests, for mission critical field tests this year, and start testing next year, then maybe at the end next year, very optimistically next year, we will have some certification. I mean, maybe I should say that at the moment there is no global recognized mission critical certification available. So if we manage to do this next year, it will be the first possibility to do certification.
Yes, yeah, and it's also of course driven by what the user community and what the authority community and the operators that are want as well, right? And so clearly you have to have deployments in order to make it worthwhile as well to be able to do certification. So we're trying to basically work with all the stakeholders to make that happen so that when they need it, it's ready. But yeah, I would agree with Harold's timeline.
Okay, good. And then this is another timeline question about how long approximately before we have certification programs for other MCX devices like the MCX server.
Another crystal ball. Maybe I just repeat what Chris just said. It depends also on the demand and on the contributions vendors, operators can provide to have these test cases available, to have conformance test cases available to put this into a certification scheme. So it will come after the device client certification, but how long after, it's difficult to say today.
Okay. And will GCF be the only certification organization for MCX devices, or is the work available from other certification organizations like the PTCRB?
Yeah, good question. We could maybe say we're the only global one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we cannot speak on behalf of PTCRB, so maybe we need to ask them, or they need to provide this answer.
Okay, right. Okay. And then does the task force results change or reinforce the outlined TCCA testing approach from the method that you outlined in the January document titled Introduction to Mission Critical Service Interoperability?
Mission critical, I don't know which document you're referring to.
Okay. This says a January document.
Okay.
We'll see.
I mean, we are working on this mission critical certification since last year. We had a workshop in October where we kicked off these activities together with GCF. And I guess the approach is since then the same. So there may be some details which we are wiser now, but I guess the approach should be the same. But I need to review this document. I don't know by heart what all the content of the document.
Okay, all right, great. And then as for the minimal set of features needed for certification, the question is more in line of the different MCX functionalities. It makes no sense that a client conforms to test A plus B and another client is to conform to test C plus D.
Correct, yeah.
So I think he's clarifying the earlier question.
Yes, so I understand the question that if one vendor implements feature A and B and the other vendor implements feature C and D, they are not interoperable because different feature sets. What we have tried with this phase 1 feature set is that we looked at the tests which have been executed during the ETSI-plug tests. And we picked those tests which have been executed most of the times, or by most of the vendors. So we are pretty confident that those are the features which are implemented and also asked for on the highest demand. So for these phase 1 features, we think that most of the vendors will have implemented them, and they will then also work with each other.
Okay, good. Next question, will you plan to cover several 3GPP releases or focusing on one specific release?
I think we would cover release 15 onwards, yes. Yeah, ultimately we want to be here for the long term, so we want to, provided the industry wants us to do this, we'll keep doing it, yeah.
Okay, good. And then kind of along those lines, what is the baseline 3GPP release that the certification community is proposing?
Yeah, it's release 15. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, those have been a really good round of questions. I appreciate all the attendees for providing all the input and some excellent questions. Also, we have a record of all of your questions, and if there's anything that needs to be followed up on or anything that we didn't answer completely, we can get you an answer and more information after this is over. And again, a recording of the webinar will be emailed to all registrants and will be available at rrmediagroup.com. Thank you very much again to our presenters and to the attendees and to TCCA and the GCF for serving as our sponsors today. That concludes our webinar, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks very much, Sandra.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.